Hi everybody, you are watching Front End House YouTube channel. On our channel, you will find many experts who want to share their knowledge from the fields of design, software development and business development. Today we will speak with Olga, who is UI and UX designer, and we will speak about accessibility. Ready?
No, but yeah, let's go.
No, Olga is ready, I'm sure. Let's go. So let's start our talk about accessibility in web apps and mobile apps. And I wanted to ask you why accessibility is so important and why should we invest in it?
Okay, so a lot of teams actually overrode the importance of accessibility or treat it as an additional feature, while actually we should treat accessibility as some kind of fundamental thing, because it helps us. Because, for example, people think that only disabled people or people with some kind of impairments can benefit from accessibility. This is not true. It's because when you create accessible products, you should think of it as about expanding your audience. Because you will not only reach your base group of users, but you will also gain new ones. You will also gain new ones. That's why accessibility is so important, not only for you, of course, but also for you. That's why taking into consideration your users' needs is so important, and you should also think about people who are disabled and or impaired. For example, when you think about visually impaired people, you might only think about those who are heavily impaired. But actually almost 2 billion people have some kind of visual impairment. That's why it's so important to also include
How many people?
Almost 2 billion.
2 billion. Almost 2 billion.
Yes, because you meet them everywhere. You just don't know that they are visually impaired or something. And you don't want to rid yourself of these users.
Yeah, of course.
That's why accessibility should be important for you. That's why you should invest time into doing it properly.
And what should we pay attention to while creating an accessible app? For example, contrasts, maybe sound.
Actually, accessibility should be a base. Accessibility is actually, when you think about accessibility, you think that this is an additional feature. That's how we are used to talking about it. But actually, this should be some kind of standard.
Yeah.
Accessibility is a design standard that any product should live up to in order to be accessible. And accessibility is crucial for creating a good user experience. There can be no good user experience without applying accessibility rules to it. For example, contrast ratio is only one of these things. But when talking about accessibility, you should actually start from the basic heuristics of the UX design, because they don't only talk about good user experience. They also talk about accessibility. So contrast ratio is one of the things that are associated with accessibility, possibly the most famous one, but actually...
Yeah, that is why I remembered about this one.
Yes, but I would say that the most important thing, the most fundamental thing to accessible design is consistency.
Consistency?
Yes, because keeping consistency in design makes your app more accessible, because your user can memorize patterns instead of trying to figure out what is going on in the app. That's why.
What do you mean while talking about consistency?
Yes, so you should follow some ground rules set in the very beginning. You should follow your style guide. You should follow. You should basically design in a consistent way, which means, for example, when you that might be the simplest example, but if you use border radius, you should use the same border radius everywhere in the course. For example, you shouldn't make course with border radius and without them, because this creates inconsistency. This is not the most important feature,
For accessibility, I think.
Yes.
It's not...
Yes, not exactly, but...
It will not help.
Yes, it's not... But we still do it.
Mm-hmm.
We still do it because we are invested to creating consistent design, consistent experience, for example. Because consistency of design means also consistency of experience. That's why it's very important, and also, but consistency does not only refer to consistency in your design. It also means creating products that are consistent with users' cognitive patterns. Basically, you have to understand that your user has already had some experience with the digital world, and his experiences are based on what he already knows. That's why you shouldn't, invent something that doesn't yet exist. You should look into what is there and design based on that. This is the best way of designing accessible applications. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And platforms. For example, X for closing something.
Yes. This is a pattern basically. Mm-hmm. If you make a close button using some other icon, the user might not understand it.
Maybe X which trying to run away from you.
But it's not only about the icon. I don't know if you've ever noticed it, but the close icon is always in the same place.
Yeah, it's on the right
top corner. Yes,
right.
And if you move it to the left bottom corner, it will not be.
I'm feeling that right now.
Yes. Oh. That's why you should follow such patterns. You should take it into account. So for me, consistency is one of the most important things when it comes to design, to accessibility. Yeah, but of course, contrast ratio is also an important thing that helps your users, with visually impaired users, to read everything. But it's not all. Accessibility also means, for example, size of the elements. Mm-hmm. For example, you should think if you, for example, have to use some kinds of buttons that are very small, below 32 pixels, for example. It isn't recommended, but it might happen in some extreme situations. Then you should probably think about the size of the tappable area around it to make it accessible. So, yeah.
Okay.
Make it accessible. But also, you might want to consider your hearing impaired users' needs. I am such a user, for example. But when you add captions, you have not only me and other impaired people, but also all the other.
Yeah, the people who are driving the bus and don't want to use their headphones or something.
Yes, for example, or you are including people who, for example, who feel shy about making calls or something. If you give them possibility to use chats, for example. This will be good for disabled people, sure, but it will also, include other users that
younger generation.
Yes,
who doesn't use.
You should
phones.
Also remember about the fact that we will all be impaired at some point because we will grow old.
Yeah.
And we should think about it. Mm-hmm. That's why, for example, we should think about it. Why, for example, designing architecture, designing transport means.
Yeah.
Because we will not be young forever.
True.
So that's why.
Yesterday, when we were talking with Olga, she said impressive thing. She said everybody could become disabled at every moment of our lives, and we have to remember about it to create products which will be acceptable for everyone. And that makes perfect sense.
Which will not exclude us from life, basically. If we suddenly become impaired or...
That's true. And especially, we are talking about accessibility in context of software development, but as you said, it is really important for every part our lives.
Yeah, because user experience is not only about the software too.
Yeah.
User experience is about everything. Because
everything.
design is about everything. Design is about people. So yeah.
Software is about people too.
Yeah.
I have to think about it for a minute.
Software is tools for people too. So
what are your favorite tricks to make an app accessible? Do you have any? Or
I try to live up to accessibility standards.
That's not tricks.
That's not tricks for me. I treat it as fundamental requirements of design. Actually, so I'm not I'm not using any tricks. This is just some things like, for example, contrast ratio that I try to always think about. For example, I use accessibility plugins to check contrast ratios or things like that. But this is a fundamental thing for me. So
you just have to follow rules.
Yeah, follow rules. But I really want people to perceive it as fundamental thing, not additional feature or something like that. We don't think about accessibility after we design the product. We think about it before we start designing the product.
Just while creating the product, you have to keep in mind your user.
Yes, exactly, your user's needs. I'd probably ask some more business questions about why exactly should investors take accessibility.
So who can benefit from accessibility of application or website or anything apart from users? It could be useful for owners of the business too, right?
Actually it can be a question of maximizing your revenue by expanding your user base. Because when you live up to the accessibility standards, you make the whole experience better for people with disabilities and with any kind of impairment, but also for all people who might use it. Because you have to take into account that people are different. We have different beliefs, we have different habits. We don't perceive the world in the same way. Some people are shy and they, for example, don't want to make calls. They want to use the chat feature. And taking that into consideration, you basically include them in the whole experience, and you can maximize your revenue this way. That's why it's so important to invest in accessibility, because you can basically open your product to all, and you might notice that you got more users basically. That's why you should always think about accessibility. And another thing that can make your web app or your product accessible is UX writing.
UX writing.
Yes, and because UX writing helps your user understand what is going on, and also it helps you keep consistency throughout the design. When you use the same language, throughout the whole design, you make it more accessible.
Yeah, we have remember about all of the things you have told today.
Also, big players in the industry such as Apple or Google take accessibility very seriously. Apple, for example, hires haptic designers. Haptics refers to stimulating other senses than just sight. So, for example, when you tap on something, it should vibrate. And this way you can make your product even more accessible than ever. That's why Apple is very invested into designing the haptics interactions. That's why we should take an example from them.
Yeah, we definitely should. If you want to create software which will keep in mind your end user, the product which will be accessible and useful for different types of people, if I can say that, types of people.
Yes, we often create personas. We always create personas while designing any kind of experience. But even though we still have to remember that our real users are not our personas. They can be similar to our personas, but a persona is actually a construct that helps you design for the main target groups. But inside of these target groups, people differ too. That's why accessibility is a tool which can help you reach everyone.
You can reach us via the form on our website to contact our experts and talk about accessibility of your app and creating of your new application. Do you have examples of user experience and accessibility in real life?
Of course, I do. As I mentioned before, design is about people. So that's why it isn't just about the specific tool like software or something. It's about everything. It's about our everyday lives, and that's why we should think about accessibility in everything that we do, even if in architecture, even in designing furniture, for example. The example of treating accessibility standards as an additional feature is, for example, some kinds of safety tools that prevent babies from getting hurt by, for example, sharp corners of the furniture. Why in fact the furniture should be
little fingers.
Yes.
My feet.
Yes. Why in fact you should consider it while designing the furniture. So that you don't have to buy any additional stuff to prevent your kid from getting hurt.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Yes, and that's why, for example, all the buses should have low floor, so they are accessible to older people, but also to you when you are old. So that's why
when I have broken leg or something.
Yes, and that's why accessibility is very important. And I can also give you an example of a missed opportunity when it comes to accessibility, and that would be Rubik's Cube. For me, it's a symbol of missed opportunity to make the product fully accessible, because it was so easy to make it accessible. All you had to do is to add some patterns, for example, for each color, or even braille letters to each color of the cube. You could also use such a choice of colors for it, so that the people with visual impairments could see it better. It was so easy. Can you see that?
Yeah, but Rubik's Cube wants you to suffer, and that is the purpose of
it. But there is a version of the Rubik's Cube that is accessible. But it's so wrong. There shouldn't be an accessible version of something. You know what I'm getting at? You know what I'm getting at? It's our duty to make something accessible from the beginning. Sometimes it's not possible to make something accessible for everyone. For example, when you have forks or spoons for people who suffer from Parkinson's, it might be there might be some barriers that prevent you from making the same product for everyone, because a spoon or fork for people with Parkinson's should have some kind of stabilizing technology that enables them to use them. Stabilizing technology, but developing a tool with stabilizing technology costs more than making regular fork or spoon. That's why in some situations accessibility is not possible to implement, but wherever possible we should consider it.
For example, as in Rubik's Cube.
I think Rubik's Cube.
That makes sense.
Oh, there is another thing that I would like to tell you about, because this is very interesting. While designing user experience, you actually take into account the needs of all of your users, but you try to design for the most extreme one, which means, for example, you should design products for people who are digitally illiterate. Why? Because it will make your product accessible to everyone. If your grandma can use it, everyone can use it. That's why that is accessibility too. Thinking about your users' needs, but taking into account needs of the weakest group.
Interesting. But now we have to finish, unfortunately.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for today's talk. You can watch other videos on our Front-End House channel, or also visit our website frontendhouse.com and check open positions and contact us via form on our website. Thank you so much. See you next time.
Thank you.
High five.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you. See you next time.
See you. Bye.